The avoidant carries shame they will never voluntarily discuss. On the surface, they appear unbothered by how the relationship ended, indifferent to the pain they caused, unconcerned with the patterns that drove you away. But beneath this performance of detachment lies profound shame about how they treated you. They know what they did. They remember the specific moments of cruelty disguised as honesty, the coldness deployed as protection, the disappearing acts that left you confused and hurt. This shame is not abstract guilt about being imperfect in relationship. It is specific, detailed recognition that they hurt someone who deserved better, and this recognition eats at them in ways they cannot express without dismantling the defensive structure that has become their identity. They remember every moment they should have shown up and did not. The avoidance shame is rooted in their awareness of specific failures. They remember when you needed emotional support and they went cold instead. They remember when you expressed hurt and they dismissed it as you being too sensitive. They remember when you asked for basic communication and they ghosted for days. These are not vague impressions, but vivid memories that replay unbidden, especially in quiet moments when their defenses are lowered. The shame comes from the recognition that in each of these instances, they knew what you needed, they knew how to provide it, and they chose their comfort over your well-being. It was not ignorance. It was not inability. It was conscious prioritization of their fear over your humanity. And confronting this truth is unbearable. The awareness that you did not deserve their treatment. What deepens the shame is the avoidant's belated recognition that you were not the problem they convinced themselves you were. You were not too needy. You were not too demanding. You were not asking for anything unreasonable. You simply wanted basic emotional presence, consistency, and respect. These are not excessive requirements, but the minimum foundation of functional partnership. The avoidant knows this now, even if they could not admit it then. They are ashamed because they devalued someone valuable, framed normal needs as character flaws, and treated your reasonable expectations as a tax on their autonomy. The shame is the internal acknowledgement that they were wrong, that their narrative was self-serving distortion, that the person they pushed away was offering something healthy they were too dysfunctional to receive. They cannot undo the damage they caused. The shame is intensified by the permanence of their actions. Words spoken cannot be unspoken. Hurt inflicted cannot be uninflicted. Time wasted cannot be reclaimed. The avoidant sits with the knowledge that they damaged you in ways that may have lasting effects. They contributed to your insecurity, made you question your worth, perhaps even contributed to wounds you will carry into future relationships. This recognition is devastating because there is no way to make it right. You have moved on. You have healed. You have closed the door on someone who proved, through repeated action, that they could not meet you where you needed to be met. The avoidance shame exists in isolation because the person they harmed is no longer accessible for apology or repair. They must simply live with what they did and the knowledge that they will never have the opportunity to demonstrate they understand how wrong they were. The comparison to who they could have been. The avoidant is ashamed when they compare the person they were in the relationship to the person they are capable of being. They know they can be warm, communicative, emotionally present. They demonstrate these qualities in other contexts, with other people, in situations where the stakes feel lower and the vulnerability less threatening. This makes their treatment of you even more shameful because it reveals their behavior was not about capacity, but about choice. They chose to give you less than they were capable of giving. They chose to be their worst self, rather than rise to meet someone who deserved their best. The shame is the recognition that they failed, not because they lacked ability, but because they lacked courage. And this failure cost them someone they genuinely cared about. Why the shame remains hidden forever. The avoidant will likely never tell you about this shame. Admitting it would require vulnerability they still cannot access, accountability they are still too defended to take. So the shame lives in secret, surfacing in moments alone, in comparisons to you that everyone else fails, in the quiet acknowledgement that they destroyed something good through fear. The shame does not inspire change for most avoidants. It simply becomes another emotion to suppress, another truth to avoid, another piece of evidence that they are fundamentally unable to sustain the intimacy they claim to desire. They are ashamed of how they treated you, and that shame, along with everything else they feel but cannot express, remains buried behind the walls that prevented them from loving you properly when they had the chance.